Okay.
Hey, welcome everybody. So thankful that you're here today, and welcome back to the IMF coaching program with holinnesspastors.com. And I am excited to share an interview with you with Reverend Chris Cravens. Chris is a personal hero of mine, a guy with a great passion for God and for people. He's been a pastor for years in Findlay, Ohio, and is currently serving as the leader of the Bible Methodist Connection of Churches for the Heartland Conference out in that part of the country in Ohio, Indiana, that region. And so, Chris, it is great to have you with us today. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. I'm honored and just appreciate your vision for this.
Well, I want to ask, and we'll just jump right into some questions that I want to ask with you. We'd take about an hour and see what things you would share with us today. I want to ask if you had a chance to say 1 to 3 things to your 20-year-old self. All right. So if you get to go back and talk to a 20-year-old Chris Cravens and say, man, I know you're thinking about going into pastoring. Here's 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, things that you want to say to that guy. What would you say to him?
Well, I thought about that a lot, and I thought about some very intricate, detailed responses, but then I thought, no, there's just some sweeping things I would say to myself. One is, I would say, Chris, you need to pray more. Not that I didn't pray. I agonized before God, but more deliberate discipline. I took a church of 12, went to a second church that was very dysfunctional, broken, about 35, and saw God do miraculous things over the 26, 27 years now. So those were things that I didn't happen just because I wasn't in touch with God, but there was a more deliberate approach to prayer instead of a desperate approach to prayer. The second thing I would tell myself is, Chris, you need to listen to others more. I'm a type A go-getter. I'm getting it done, man.
Right.
And I'm really easy to, get my way. I see you as an obstacle instead of an opportunity. And so people with differing views or other, I was quick to not hear really what they were saying. And so I would listen to others more. And then this is what I would also say, my third one is, Chris, listen to yourself more. And by that, I'm not talking about narcissism here. I'm talking about listen to how you're presenting yourself.
Okay.
Done me some damage over the years because that's not what I said, but that's what it felt like to them when I said it. Strong. I'm a large-bodied man. I'm 6 foot. I didn't think these thoughts then. Now I don't want to go into a room and just tower over 2 or 3 inches over people. And there's guys taller than me, but by and large, I'm a big, and that just changes the way I present. My personal presentation, I would tell myself, those are some things I'd say to myself. I'd say some other things too. But
right. You're welcome to share. You're welcome to share more if you'd like to. I don't mean to limit you to 3. If you got more stuff,
we'll probably cover them.
Okay. All right. What in terms of leadership, what is the greatest thing you've ever learned about leadership? If you had to narrow it down, I know there's books, there's whole books and conferences and all this on leadership. But if you had to narrow it down, what would you say is the greatest thing you think you've ever learned about leadership?
Discernment.
Okay.
In this regard, if I had one thing to change about myself, or one great desire that has grown through the years, is discernment. Knowing timing. Timing is so critical to whether you're rolling out a new idea or you're promoting something, or you feel like God's given you a vision. John Maxwell has a great, there's tens of thousands of books on leadership, and I probably own a 40% of them.
Right.
I've got them triple stacked in my study on leadership. Maxwell, of course, would be probably the guru of everybody. He's really good, basic leadership. And he says, one step ahead, you're a leader. Yeah. People that, good for you. People that, you're one step ahead, you're a leader, 10 steps ahead, you're a martyr.
Yeah. Right.
And sometimes you can blow a good idea. It's like the pastor I learned from, who I learned how not to. He talked about going into his church in the first week, taking the picture of Jesus off the wall and changing all the chairs. And he got voted out in a month. They decided to send him back. Not that those things shouldn't have happened, but it might have been good had he waited a year.
Right.
So discernment is a big part of leadership and of vision casting. I think, there's a lot of leadership cliches that can be said, and many of them are true as you read them. But learning the leadership gifts and the various leadership styles and others around me.
Okay.
Very important. It was a life changer for me that I wish I would have learned sooner. As I look at people around me or in the church, there's three basic kinds of leadership: strategic leadership, analytical leadership, and operational leadership. And the strategic leader is me, and we can be a splash of all these. And a real pastor has to be a splash of all these. But you really got to be a strategic leader that sees the long ball and looks, sees the stars, way over the fence.
Right.
The analytical leader is the guy who counts it all up, and he knows how many beans are in the bag and how many, MacArthur says, take the mountain. We're going to take, Joshua and Caleb were strategic leaders. Take the mountain. The analytical guys got all choked up about the size of the grapes and how many staffs and rods it's going to take and and then the operational leaders said, man, it's putting my life on the line. I'm not going. Well, there's different kinds of leaders, and they can complement the process. And had I learned that, I could have used more people around me in the gift sets that God gave them. And again, instead of seeing them as my opposition.
Wow, that's exceedingly valuable, because I can see the same thing at times looking back. I can see where I failed to appreciate the counterpoint that somebody provided. And you go in guns blazing because you're thinking that this is the Lord's will, and maybe it is, but maybe it's also the Lord's will that you take them with you and that they provide a counterpoint to something that you don't have. And that's valuable. Thank you.
Another valuable leadership tip for me that I wish I would have been able to, I believe I've always felt this way, but I haven't articulated it. And that is that person. I say this has become a saying of mine last 12, 15 years. You are more important than what you do to the people around me. You are more important to me than what you do. And sometimes as a strong leader, the goal is the vision, but Jesus never lost sight of the people.
Right. So preventing them from feeling like you're using them just to accomplish your thing. And this is, okay. Yeah. Valuable. Good.
Or if they needed a break, or they needed to, they need a little time off, or they just can't keep teaching that class. They need to be able to spend some time with their family and say, it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah. How has failure shaped your life, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, every day, successful pastors have to learn to live with failure. Our success will be measured by our threshold pain, our pain threshold. And the only way to increase your threshold for pain is pain. The only way to increase your prayer life is to pray. The only way to build your muscles in a workout room is to break down and stress the ones that are there. So they grow back bigger and stronger. All the analogies are true. And the leaders, there's many a capable leader who will never lead because their inability to endure or handle failure and pain. How we handle our losses and our pain, how we respond to them, determines our level of success.
Yeah.
That's when people watch us the most. I feel like I hardly ever feel like I preach a sermon and I walk away and go home and say, boy, I hope that's on YouTube. Most of the time I go home saying, Lord, I'm sorry. I don't think I did very good. I hope it's better than what it felt like. But what happens the next, I don't just settle for that. If I know where I'm weak, I endeavor to address those things.
Right.
And constantly move in those directions.
So learning from failure in the sense that you can adapt and rise in some area in those kind of ways. Is there a failure that you can think of in your ministry, sometime when you tried something and it went south for whatever reason, and it really affected and improved or changed your mindset or the way you went about something? Is there a story you can tell me of a time when it didn't go well and it made a change in the way you looked at things?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could
tell the story. You just can't tell the whole story, right?
But I probably can't. Some of them would include situations and things that would make others volatile.
Sure, I can understand.
I don't want to do that, but you're not asking me to. I know, but yes, I've misread people. Misunderstood people, only to find out later while they stand before me in tears. They've had time to think about what they initially said, and then I feel like a heel. Goes back to me saying, I'm learning and have learned quite a bit to listen. Just wait and listen, and to not respond rapidly, to slow down just a little bit. I mean, I'm a quick draw, and with your gift can also, your strength can be your weakness. I'm fast. I can speak. I don't even need to pre-think it, but that is more of a hindrance at times than a blessing by far. So I have to be really careful with that. And time has a way of bringing to the surface the real intent. Sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes you got to react right now.
It's true.
But, gain wisdom from that. I think the biggest thing I would like to say there is I've just learned that failure is a part. Young guys coming off, failure is going to be a part. You're never going to go to the pulpit, at least I never have, feeling like, boy, this sermon is completely ready. I always felt like, man, if I had just a little more time to pray and study, if I could just develop that point a little more. I never preach with walking away with everybody just thinking it was the greatest thing. Especially when you pastor and you're there a long time, and the applause gets less and less because they're more comfortable and familiar with you. I stayed 23 years at Finley. I bought most everybody else's lunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So, I know pastors, their feelings are hurt because somebody didn't buy their lunch, didn't pay. Well, that has to move. Early on, you get all those benefits and blessings, right. But you learn to live with those adjustments. The day we dedicated our church and we had 400 plus people there. I think I lost you, Daryl.
No, I can still see you. Can you see me?
Oh, something happened. I'm sorry. No, I lost it. Yeah, something. I don't know what's going on here. My apologies to all those watching the video.
Did you, I can cut this if I need to. So did you accidentally click stop video or click Alt V maybe or something like that?
No, let me just go back to here. Okay, I see myself, but I lost sight of you. Back to me. Let me just do that. There we are. Now I see you again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right.
Let me just let me pick up about the failure part here.
Sure.
So it's the dedication Sunday of the church, and we got 400 plus people there. we're talking about a miracle, multi-million-dollar property and all. It just from a church and a parsonage combined, we're at 75,000.
Right.
So this is a big adjustment,
Yeah.
And mayor of the city is there. The city mayor is there. It's a big deal. Well, one of our main members walks out, thumps me on the chest, and said, "Pastor, don't you get the big head?" Of all days, 6 years we've been on this journey, and she's really worried I'm going to get the big head on one day. Of all the things that happened to me that day, I remember that the most vividly. Don't get the big head. And to this day, I want to make sure I don't get the big head, But, she thumped me on the chest. That just happens. You have to be able to roll with that.
Right. Yeah.
And know that failure is a part. There's a book that Dr. Smith, Mark Smith, recommended to me back in a pretty painful time in my life. Said everybody needs an enemy. And he said, you got to read it, Cravens. And I was driving down the road one day, and there was a lady in my church that just has caused me grief, and she has for 20 years. And the Lord spoke to my spirit. It was on Crystal Avenue in Findlay, Ohio. I can remember because it's been years ago now. He said to me, "You need her." Part of the failure for us is associated with people.
Mm-hmm.
I've had them serve God for years and turn and just backslide and walk away, and you sit in your car, weep, and say, "What could I have done different?"
Yeah.
So you have to live with that and surrender that.
How do you deal with the emotional fallout of that kind of process? How do you, obviously there's chances of there's possibilities of getting hurt and being just a hurt person walking around with a poor me sort of attitude. Emotionally, is that easy for you to just bounce back from that sort of thing? Is it difficult? So somebody leaves the church or somebody criticizes. How do you wrestle through staying positive and not getting hurt and grumpy?
Well, okay, personality has something to do with this.
Right.
My personality is very much, I'm again that quickness, and it's over quick. Mm-hmm. So I've never one to, I can be in a meeting, it can get tense, walk outside, I'm fine, right. to a certain degree. So I have some of that built-in ability that's a benefit, but not completely. There's also the, you kind of thing to where, okay, you sting me once, you sting me twice, my fault, I'm done with you. That I really have to, that God has to really deal with me on that. Mm-hmm. And keep me humble and submissive to others. One of the things is, I had a bus captain. He was involved in sales, and sales training is pretty handy in the work of the kingdom. If you ever get a chance to have some sales training, anybody, they ought to take it. Just a little bit. Learn how to sell a product. You just learn something about the importance of product knowledge, and you also learn how to deal with the no's.
Right.
You don't count them. You don't count the no's. Mm-hmm. So I'm out calling with this guy. He's a big farm guy, salesman. We're working on a bus route. We're going door to door. And it's not going very good. Get in the car. He says, about today? Today's been a great success. I said, really? We got 2 kids coming tomorrow on the bus. He said, yeah, but you just don't count. We're not going to count the no's.
Right.
So I'm in a ministerial. I'm at a ministerial gathering. I've been in the pastorate for 3 years. Took a church of 12. We hit 50 in 2 years' time. Came right out a rural church. And so those are just people coming to Jesus, adults, no bus ministry, nothing. And so I'm at a ministerial, and the conference president says, hey, I want some of you guys to stand up and tell what God's doing in your church. I get up and I talk about, people got saved, blah, 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 blah. And I'm walking out of that, and one of the pastors come up to me and said, why is it, there's Cravens with all the good news, all of his good news. He said, you got all that good news, Cravens, real sarcastic. And I said, really? And I stopped, and it was one of the older elders, and I just felt horrible. And he said, yeah. I said, you mean nobody has gotten saved at your church and went, well, we had a teenage girl at the altar last Sunday. I said, why didn't you talk about her instead of the board problem? You got up and bellyached about your board. When you got a girl saved, man, that's great, Where was his focus at?
Yeah, right.
Had tell you, facing issues and trouble, absolutely. Paradigms that were twisted and, oh, my word. Yeah, absolutely. Go home at night and cry often. But, man, I celebrated the victories.
Yeah.
Not only outwardly, but in my heart. I chose to celebrate the victories. And failure is also, I got to add this, there's nothing more important than my wife in this battle.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me tell you, we need sanctified, committed, called wives to be our helpmates. Because that brings incredible stability when my world's rocking and I come home and it's not rocking her world too.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell everybody they have to live just like me and every pastor's wife has to be just like mine. It'd probably be better off if they were, because she's just pure gold. But I don't want to get all sappy here, but I think it's evident that Julie's a rock and not a weight. Mm-hmm. She's stability.
Yeah.
And that has given my ministry longevity.
It's very, very true. Yeah. So on this topic of personal growth and habits, I'm kind of jump to a different section of or a different aspect of things. Do you have a morning routine? What's your day like? How do you get started? What's that look like for you?
It is. I'm going through an adjustment right now with the new job because I travel more.
Right.
But when I'm home, I'm actually home.
Mm-hmm.
So different than pastoring, to where it was just on and forever.
Mm-hmm.
Even in my sleep, I'm ready to run to the hospital. That's not as apt to happen to me now.
Right.
So now it's different. So I'm adjusting, but in my pastorate work, especially, mornings, I always dressed and got going just like I was going to work, and got out the door and got to my study. And there was some years when the study was in my home, I still went to my study and did what I could. But often I was meeting breakfast appointments or with parishioners. And so I found my best time to do personal things, go to the gym, or, which I don't do enough of, but I have at times, and do starts about 1:00.
Okay.
And from 1 to supper on a daily today was my reading, devotional, personal time. Because when I work out or I go walking or whatever I'm doing, I got to put on jeans or some kind of appropriate clothing. Mm-hmm. And then I got to shower. So I don't want to do that at a time. I'm adding to my morning when I might need to meet a guy at 7:30 or 8:00 or 7 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so that just worked for me. Found that worked for me. Other guys I know, they like that. They don't mind getting up in the morning is pretty routine. But I was out dealing with businessmen sometimes and community people and eating at the restaurant full of farmers and retirees or what, making those calls, drinking coffee.
Right.
So I found out that was a little bit difficult. The afternoon, I found a lot of downtime.
Interesting.
Then in the evening, it sparked back up
mm-hmm.
because I'd need to visit somebody or somebody come over to the house or whatever was happening. Family time, supper was family time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
a little, like you say, a little backwards from maybe what some guys say, but I like asking that question because I think it's a very individual thing, and that gives permission to guys to do what actually works in their context, and so that's valuable. So, a while ago you talked about prayer. You said you would say to your 20-year-old self, you need to pray more. what are the most valuable tips that you can give for balancing the demands of ministry with a life with Christ? So not only abounding in the work of the Lord, but abiding, and that the tension between those two. What can you say that would be helpful to a guy that's struggling and tends to lean one direction and then lean way over the other direction? Give me some thoughts on balancing that and building a system that would help sustain church and ministry with a good life with Christ.
Okay. I love these conversations. I appreciate the vulnerability of number one of you asking the question, puts you in a vulnerable place. And I admire that. Thank you for it. But I don't separate them. I don't even go there. I don't even, it's involved in everything I do. So I'm not stressing of, is this ministry or is this what it, I mean, it's just, this is what this is right now. It's what it is right now. It's just what it is. And I've got a schedule. I want to be home at this time. Okay. Build it into my schedule of the day. And, 4:30, I'm sorry, I got an appointment. It's my family, whatever. But I don't go to work for 8 hours and then come home and have to babysit for 8 hours. So Julie has 8 hours and I've known pastors like that, to where he walks in the door or he can't even be gone at all. And the average layman out there has gone 8, 10 to 12 hours a day earning his income.
Sure.
And I've found that laymen respect our hard work ethic. So I think, some of those that were back to a mutual understanding in the spousal relationship of some of that. I don't make a distinction between that. And maybe you can help narrow down here where you want me to go. You're welcome to do that.
Okay. Let's talk about prayer, for instance. So finding time to spend with God in alone time in your closet, if you will, to use the scripture terminology for it. How do you balance that time between just you and the Lord and the demands of when you come back down from the mountain? There's a lot of demands and tasks to be done, work to be done.
Oh,
yeah, help me out with that.
Well, I think number one is to schedule those tasks literally on your calendar. Okay. So your daily, okay, just like I had this set up at 2. I had a trip to City Laundry to dry cleaning today at 9. I had to meet a guy talking about construction stuff at 10. It's all on my phone.
Right.
I schedule that. So I know I've got appointments tonight at 7. I got appointments at 8. Okay. So when I look at that, I know where my downtime is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I say, okay, today in my study, I can be in my study uninterrupted. Or I've got a 4-hour trip in my car today.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A 3-hour or an hour and a half to the hospital, or 30 minutes.
Right.
And I'm going to just pray in that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because our world has to be a little fluid.
Yeah. Right.
I quit putting myself on guilt trips.
Okay.
Because I wasn't the farmer who, like the farmers I pastored, Brother Cravens, we don't know where you worked that time in. I knew we spent an hour in prayer and family worship after lunch every day, because our lunch was our biggest meal, and we kind of were resting every day before we went back out to do the chores.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing interrupted them. Mm-hmm. Our world gets interrupted.
Yeah.
So when I look at a day, and I don't pray on Wednesday at 9:30, but I'm in my car this evening at 5:30, and I know I got an hour's trip, I don't choke up about it.
Okay.
Because I'm always thinking about the Lord, and I don't see, there's some in seminary, there were some that said, your personal devotion should be separate from your sermon preparation. I never understood that. Now, I'm not always having a sermon burning on my heart, so I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But the best sermons I have preached have come right out of my soul.
Right. Right.
That God slipped in beside me, and a scripture just begins to unwrap and in my heart, and man, I'm
Sure.
telling you, it's boiling, and I got, you know, and I don't even hardly need notes. It's so natural. It's there. I wish I just preach right now. You know, there's
Yeah.
just something about that you crave.
Right.
It's a joy of
Right.
what you do, and it comes out of my walk with Jesus. It's not a mechanical thing that produces great sermons. It's out of my intimacy with Christ that produces great sermons and produces wisdom out in the parking lot of Walmart or Advance Auto.
Hmm.
When I bump into that guy and he's talking to me, and suddenly my heart is tender and my eyes are easily tearful because I've been walking with Jesus. It's all about my walk with Jesus.
Good. Good.
I was called, it was interviewed here not long ago by a prominent leader. I was honored to do that. They said, how do you departmentalize, your personal life, ministry life, and soul winning? I said, I don't. I've never sit down and thought, okay, 2:00, I'm going to soul win.
Hmm.
We'll go soul winning now.
Right.
I'm just always,
Right.
whether I have my family with me and suddenly the waitress at the restaurant or whatever, suddenly, it's just the opportunity. I'm looking, I'm praying, and I'm not trying to sound boastful here, but the door's open.
Right.
I think guys over analytical try to overanalyze, and perfectionists are sometimes driven to, man, if it doesn't just look this way, if everything isn't lined up just like this on the shelf, it's chaos. Well, anyway, I don't know if I've answered your question, but
I know what you're saying, and I think that's valuable. I heard several things. I heard, don't beat yourself up about letting it flex around, and almost a kind of a practice of the presence of God sort of emphasis. This ongoing, Brother Lawrence, the book, The Practice of the Presence of God, talks about this ongoing conversation with Christ,
yeah,
and that kind of that idea that I'm never really out of His presence.
no,
And so I hear you saying it's not so much about segregating my time with Jesus and making it that as it is letting that time out of the box and letting it move wherever.
turning it loose. Yeah.
I hear that.
So there's also structure. So here's my plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whether this fits here or not, but here it is. So every week you need at least an hour. Every week, an hour of fasting, intense prayer. At least 1 hour scheduled. I'm isolating myself for at least that hour, maybe 2, whatever. It's a moment of isolation. Now I'm praying every day and I have a devotional, but I'm talking about like setting Wednesday apart through lunch to fast and pray for specific. Every month, you should schedule a day. A day. I call them prayer retreats. I put them on my schedule. Every year, you ought to at least have some kind of a 3-day, 3 to 4 day retreat, up to a week of solitude, some kind of isolation. Every 7 years, you need a month. So obviously that gets bumped around, but if you schedule those things and if you have any kind of help or secretary or your church board or something, they will only admire you for those things.
Talk to me more about that. So, okay. I'm speaking as a pastor. I'm speaking in the objections of the minds of anybody watching this here. Okay.
Sure.
So I can't do that. I've got, and I'm talking about the month every 7 years. Okay. I've been pastoring for 15 years and, that's not something I've done as in any kind of meaningful way. I've taken a week of vacation here, I've taken a week of vacation there, or a week of camp meeting or whatever. But that's that kind of retreat. Can't do that. Talk back to me.
So if I was your conference president, Daryl, I'd come talk to your church board because they'll enable you. And I've been doing that. I've been getting guys some time. If they will honor it, and I'm looking at just a 4-week, first week, a vacation with her family, second week, time with your spouse, third week, all by yourself, fourth week, just kind of getting your bearings. So every 5 to 7 years that a pastor is somewhere, he needs that time. There's churches that the pastor takes the summer off every year to write a book.
Right.
Then he gets a big log cabin in Colorado somewhere and he writes a book. So there's this is common practice. So it's part of professional. You can think about it this: you're investing in yourself professionally. You can schedule anything. If you schedule it, you've got the time. If you schedule it,
right.
McDonald taught us, ordering your private world or whatever. You schedule the private things even to do, and you get it on the calendar, and you make that accountable to a secretary or a church board or your spouse or whoever. And you know what? So you invest $70, $100 once a month or once a year to go spend 2 days and a night in a motel, even if it's in your town. You're just going to pray. You're not going to go there and turn on the television and do all that. Maybe you need to go somewhere else for that. There's times when I've had people that had homes, like houses on the lake, that I drove 2 hours, spent the day there, at times thinking I would go nuts. Always came home. So it's like going to the nursing home service. You come away saying, man, that was wonderful. Well worth it, Oh, and you go, man, why am I doing this?
Right.
So I would push back and just say, yes, you've got to see it as an investment in your success. That you cannot succeed. I cannot succeed without the anointing of God. This is not just about mechanics. It takes supernatural impact for us to be successful, truly successful with the gospel.
Good. So talk to me about outreach. What's the most successful thing that you've ever done in outreach?
I don't know. Jail ministries have been great. I've led hundreds to the Lord in jail ministries. For some reason that don't compute to a change culture, but I've had wonderful opportunity to. I pray that some of it has stuck.
Right.
But wonderful opportunity. Bus ministry, of course, has been a big part of my ministry, especially at Findlay. I didn't do that Traverse City area, but at Findlay we got the bus ministry going, and that really was big. Being in the community, my own outreach is just my personal. The biggest image that my church has in the community is me. So even though they see our buses, they associate that to Cravens. And now there's a transition going, and that's an important transition. But because I'm in town, I never took the shortest way to things. I took the most visible route to things. People know what car I drive. The city laundry people today, they had my stuff all before I even got out of my car and went in. I mean, they know what car I drive. They know, those are things that I make myself extremely visible in outreach and approachable, easily approachable. Waiting tables, waiting table the other day, and the waitress comes up, found out we bust her in as a child on our bus. Oh my, yeah. And we're going to get her. She wants her kids to start coming. You just never know where that's going to happen, those connections. We're involved in the Halloween parade. Believe that. Was involved in the 4th of July parade. We're running our buses, or whatever, just getting out there in the community and being evident. I go to things. I go to community events, and I don't sit in the back. I go up and I just politely sit toward the front and encourage and compliment people as I leave, and those kind of things. So
Tell me more about networking with key leaders in your community. You've cultivated, I know, some influential or some relationships with other influencers. You talked a while ago about the mayor coming. You talked about showing up at things. Talk to me about how to network with key leaders in your community. What have you learned about that?
Well, number one is they are approachable.
Okay.
So you just got to get over the fact they're approachable. So I just went to I went to a big funeral just the other day. One of our general contractors that helped build our church passed away, and he's in his late 50s. Hundreds of people there. I walk in, and his brother, they were in business together. His brother goes, hey, he said, here's my favorite pastor in the whole city. And well, that's an honor, and comes over and gives me a hug. These are big old burly guys, contractors. And here comes over a lawyer, Chris Cravens, right? Yeah, that's right. He said, man, you need to belong to the Rotary. He starts talking to me about joining the Rotary. He said, we meet at the country club. He goes, hey, everybody that's anybody is at the Rotary. You need, I said, how much does that cost? He said, it's only $250 a quarter. $1,000 a year, man. That's not I'm swallowing my teeth, Said, oh, okay, well, thank you for you just talk. An ex-mayor walks in. Hey, pastor. He didn't remember my last name, but hey, pastor. They're approachable. So I go up. I've known all of our mayors. They know me. I go to their office. I walk in, and I just say, Pastor Cravens. The secretaries all know me. Pastor, yeah, just here to tell the mayor, have a great day, okay? They see me as a community leader. See, they see us. We have an open door. So I don't try to preach and hand them tracts. I don't hand her the discipline, when I walk in and say, read page 7.
Right.
She didn't need to read page 7, but, I don't do that. I just go in and say, I'm just here to say hi. And the mayor will come out. The mayor will want to know you're here. She's not in a meeting or he's not in a meeting. And come out. Hey, Pastor Chris, how are you? I said, look, you got a second? I'll just say a prayer with you. Absolutely. Come on back. Just those doors open, I wish I'd done some of that more. We had a successful building program, and that endeared us to a lot of subcontractors and people around. A lot of open doors, working with local entities and communities. People within our community. When we bought our sign and did our sign project, we didn't reach down to Sarasota, Florida, or any of those places. I looked for all that, but we said, no, you know what? This is a time for us to invest in our own community. We went with a local sign company, got a beautiful sign. Number one, they're there all the time. Mm-hmm. But it was just another first name, built another bridge.
Yeah.
The church went in to honor me for 23 years, and they wanted to go in and get our mission statement put on the wall of our foyer to honor our tenure for us, because I helped them develop the mission statement and all this stuff. Goes in there and says, we want to do this. She goes, Pastor Cravens leaving? Yeah. She goes, I got something to show you. She went back, and there was the mission statement already created. I'd done it already. And she said, he's already been in here about 6-8 months ago. I already had this design set up for him, and he's just said he would be back sometime it's already done exactly as he designed it. Is that cool?
That's cool.
So those connections,
right?
Those connections are made just by integrating in the community and not being ashamed or bashful.
Right. Good. That's helpful. How do you get your church excited about outreach?
It's the number one thing every preacher needs to know. You got to know how to tell a story. You got to tell a story. You've got to share. It was my job every week to remind them of the real business we were in. And I didn't ignore the heart story, the stories about, I met a guy this week who, pulled me aside in the funeral home, said, Pastor, you asked me how I was doing. I got stomach cancer, stage 3. And I don't know how to handle it. And I just prayed with him. I don't give his name. I tell my people, folks, it's what it's all about. And people respond to that. You remind them of the souls. It isn't about buses. Although you celebrate the big things. I had a church not long ago, bought a bus, and didn't even think that they ought to dedicate it. Wow, man, we pulled those buses up with ribbons and lights and horns blowing, and we prayed, and I did a dedicatory statement that make Donald Trump the president of the United States proud. I mean, it's important stuff, but it was all about the souls of people, kids, on every bench, on every seat, somebody's life being changed. And so we give to that. We give money, not for buildings. We give for redemption. Mm-hmm. And you got to tell people that.
Yeah. Good. So casting that vision, helping them see, it's connected to the stories that you tell.
You have to connect the dots.
Yeah.
Connect the dots.
Let me tell a quick story that I saw. Okay, I was in your church as a freshman in college at Findlay. When you were still in the old building, the small church with the wood panel walls.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay. So I sang there on a Sunday morning, and when I was singing there with the quartet, and all of us felt it. Like when we came in, there was I would describe it as a crackle, and you were the primary crackler, but there was an energy, there was a buzz. There was a crackle in the atmosphere, like something might happen today. It might be today, and there was this sense of that. And something did, actually. There was we were singing, and we sang the song about there is a river, about the woman that came to the well, and Jesus said, the John chapter 4 story. And singing that, people started coming to the altar, and a guy got saved. And I will never forget one of the things that you did that day. I don't even know if you remember that whole process, but there was a guy that had come down, and he was I want to say he had braids. He was a motorcyclist. Clearly, he had a shirt on you had him stand up after everybody was done praying. You had him stand up, and had another couple and somebody else over here stand. I want you guys to stand up, and you said so and so. He invited so-and-so to come to church, and they were friends, and they've been praying for this guy right here, and today's the day. You were telling the story. You were just doing that, exactly what you're talking about. And
that was a big Sunday. I remember that Sunday.
Okay, do you? Yeah.
Oh, that quartet Sunday. Yeah, we had tons of people at the altar that morning. It was a harvest time. Yeah. I always believed that those services were the biggest thing we did. Everything we do all week builds to those moments, and that the expectation. I built the we were in a dilapidated old building, man. That the walls were held together with cables above the drop ceiling. Yeah. And it was the bathrooms in the basement were like going to the catacombs, And but God began to move in that place. I took personal responsibility for the atmosphere of my church. And I still do. Now it's a camp. Now it's conference. Now it's, and I remember I remember going to that church, and on the sign, the marquee, little marquee full of bugs, and it was just a terrible little marquee. The front of the church was overgrown with bushes, and they put cables across the parking lot to keep people from driving through, and it was really welcoming. And the steps were all broken, and the graffiti, the sides, the foundation of the church was all graffitied, and all that kind of stuff. Ended up having a drug lord next door watch it for us. And he actually started mowing the grass for us quite a bit, and all the graffiti stopped. So, because he'd tell all of his drug people come to the house, you don't touch that church. So anyway, and his wife actually came to service some. But anyway, out in front of the marquee, it said, "Prayerless pews produce powerless pulpits." Well, that's cute. And there may be a little truth to that, but that's not all the truth. And I remember getting on my knees in front of that sign. And I still feel this way. I said, "God, don't ever let my anointing rest on the shoulders of someone else." And I took those letters off and I put up, "Jesus saves, the hope of the gospel." As many exclamation marks as I could get out of that little kit. And I went in and I got behind the pulpit on that 4x8 sheet of plywood that's the size of that pulpit. And I got down on my face and I said, "God, right here, I want you to anoint me. And if nobody else in the house feels it, I want that anointing." And I still, sorry about that, I still feel that responsibility to carry, to help. I mean, I'm the leader. I'm the one that stands between them and eternity. You know, I had a pastor call me the other day and said, "This church needs a plan. It needs a plan." I said, I'd heard that and heard that and heard that. And yeah, plans are good. I do lots of planning, but they need a man.
Yeah. It's true.
Remember, redemption isn't just a plan. It is, but it took a man.
It's good.
The man, Christ Jesus, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Still took a man.
What's the most valuable thing you've learned about leading a worship service? You said a minute ago, talking about creating, taking responsibility for the atmosphere. What's the most valuable thing you've learned about leading worship services, creating that environment? What have you learned about that you can teach?
Well, it's the number one thing we can do. Brother Jim Keaton, Dr. Keaton used to always tell us, "Boys, when you step up on that platform, you step up." Whether you're there to pray or you're there to lead announcements, it doesn't matter. It's all God's business, and you act like it. And you step up. When you step up, you step up. And that's what pastors need to, these young pastors, they need to know it. There's a sense, it'll help you bridge gaps with some of the older people who wonders if you're going to be respectful enough. It helps bridge all kinds of things. Millennials who are wanting something that's real, your passion will impress them that it's real. If that's no different than, but there's got to be those moments when the anointing is evident on you. And then as that spread, I take charge of make sure the preliminaries are happening in an orderly fashion, keep things progressing and moving, yet always be ready to let the Holy Spirit do His work, however that may look. In our tradition, we believe the Holy Spirit can take over, and in an orderly, God glorifying manner, people can come get saved before you ever get to the sermon.
Right. Sure.
That the offertory can be anointed. And you talk about it. You encourage your congregational singer. I had a singer that couldn't carry a tune, and I told the guy running the little realistic sound box off the second pew with a PVC pipe. Remember, you said just 4 knobs across there, and he'd sit there. He was so proud he had that PVC pipe. He could sit there and up volume up. I said, when Tom gets done with the page and the music starts, you cut the mic down because he can't carry a tune, but he worshiped.
Yeah.
And worship is more important to me than tune.
Skill.
Give me heart.
Yeah. Give you heart instead of skill.
Give me heart any day over talent, and I will see someone come and develop that talent. Angie Marriott, one of the greatest children's workers I've ever known, was a bus kid at Finley, is now our children's ministry leader. Angie's 4'11" and a half. She might try to get 5 foot. You'd have to measure to be convinced. I've seen her control 100+ kids by herself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She's a person that has this dynamic about her, and she takes worship extremely serious. And she is uh, she's a person that understands that whole dynamic, and her focus on worship with the children captivates their attention to where even in a setting of hers, there's a sense of God's presence and glory, all of those things. Anyway, I've said enough about
Good.
that. Probably.
Good. Um, my,
We're all over the place. My apologies.
No, that's fine. I'm working through my questions that I wanted to ask, and I appreciate very much appreciate your time. You have anything you'd like to share with my guys? Any websites or books, products, conferences you recommend? Something that you do that you'd like to point them to? What's something that they need to check out?
Well, the worst thing you could do in ministry is isolate yourself. So, I know that some bivocational, you're bivocational, you still have to make time to get around people that will challenge you. Okay. I've always made it a point to at least once a year get in a room with people smarter than me. That doesn't take much. Sometimes in the pastorate, because we're unique in our calling, there's not much that rivals us, because it's like a guy being in the church and he's the only carpenter in the church. Well, there's just hands down nobody rivals what he does.
Sure. Right.
Okay. And we need to get in a position where we're challenged. I've always I still take graduate work at times, do classes still, grad work. Even though I have a master's, I still do stuff, and love to go get a doctorate someday, but if I had time to do it. But I'm still doing things like that because it's important to stimulate my mind and keep me developing. And guys need to make sure that they're going to their ministerials, they're going to their social gatherings, they're getting to those events, whatever is possible to them. And sometimes it's just not possible. And then there's other events and venues that are outside of our tradition that you can also learn a tremendous amount by. And they're free. So many of them are so inexpensive. They're cheap. And to go, you just got the trip there and back. And it's always good. When I was on vacation with my family, Sunday morning, I intentionally, usually it was not a holiness church, because I wanted to get in a church much larger than mine. I wanted to experience, I would always intentionally go to some huge Baptist church or some huge whatever. And I wasn't there to learn the theology. I was there to see how it ran.
Right.
I wanted to see how did they greet me at the door. And I want to scarf up all the literature out of the pews or the chairs. I scarfed up everything that was free,
Yes, right.
And I brought it home. I had files full of this free stuff. Now with Google and internet,
sure,
I don't need to do that so much, but I still do that though. I go into if I was in your church right now and I saw an offering envelope that I didn't recognize, it'd be in my Bible going home with me.
Right. Yeah.
It's what I'm doing constantly, and guys need to do that. I've stopped. Yeah. So anyway, get into those. Don't isolate yourself. Get into your whatever. If you're part of a denomination or a conference, which is a good reason to pick a good one, like a Mid-America Conference or Heartland Conference or Bible Methodist. We like those. But there's
BibleMethodist.org. There you go.
There you go. Go there. But whatever conference, it's part of the importance of picking that conference is who are the men that you want to sharpen and shape your life.
Yeah, right.
Who do you want to partner? It's what pulled me to Bible Methodism. Guys like your granddaddy, V.O. Agin. I wanted to be that kind of a man. Dr. William Gale. I wanted to be a William Gale. Mm-hmm. I wanted to preach like a Daniel Stetler. I wanted to have a passion for like Gary Brugger. I wanted to, right down the list of
sure.
people that's part of it. Those were key people to me. And so to do that, you got to associate with those types of people and make sure you're still. I go to Aldersgate Forum at GBS. That's kind of it's kind of an egghead type of gathering, but I go in there sometimes. I mean, those guys, there's some smart dudes there, and but I'm like, whew, I'm lost most of the time, but that's okay. I want to know what they know.
That's good. Chris, it's been about an hour. I want to cut it off and be faithful to your time. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and to just kind of share your heart and your head with these guys. And those of you who are watching, if you are watching this and it's been helpful to you, here's what I want you to do. I want you to share it with somebody. Okay. Obviously, you can't actually share the video. What you can do is you can share the promotional clip that's down below this. You can share that openly with anybody. I think, Chris, have you sent me? Did you say, was it you that sent me some sermons that I was able to share with others? Is that you, or is it somebody else that had sent those?
I know I'm getting ready to send you. In fact, I have a whole outline on the book of Ephesians I've done.
Oh, great. Okay.
Those I'm going to get to you here.
Fantastic. If you'll send that to me, I'll put those as well. So guys that are watching, the resources that Chris shares, whatever stuff he shares with me will be down below. So Chris, if you got helpful stuff, hey, send it on, and something that's a blessing you don't mind sharing with our guys, I'll put that in a link down below. Everybody can download that. And there's a promotional clip down below. You can share it with a pastor friend, share it on Facebook or wherever in a pastor's group. And that's for free. And so encourage guys to be part of this coaching program. And you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to